everyone, welcome to GW Prime Live. Your where is here. In today's rapidly evolving world, where technology and data reign supreme, there is one field that is steadily gaining significance and transforming the way we understand and interact with our surroundings. That is geospatial technologies. From optimizing urban infrastructure to tracking the effects of climate change, geospatial technologies have become indispensable tools for decision makers across industries. Today, we are going to discuss the different challenges that the society in general is facing, like climate change, carbon emissions, natural disasters, etc., and how to leverage the power of geospatial data to address the environmental, social, and governance challenges facing our society. We have with us our esteemed panelist, Dr. Sheila Lakshmi Steinberg. Hello, Sheila. Welcome to GW Prime Live.
Hello, nice to see everybody.
And we have with us Mr. Mike Spaeth. Hello, Mike. Welcome to GW Prime Live.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate.
Thank you so much for being present here. So, Dr. Sheila Lakshmi Steinberg is the director of the UMass Global Institute for Geospatial Education. She is also a full-time professor of GIS, Social and Environmental Sciences at UMass Global. Sheila is an accomplished GIS advocate and author for applying GIS across disciplines. Mike Spaeth is the director of North America EarthDaily Analytics, formerly ESG director at Moody's, legislative associate for US Senator Frank Lautenberg, and campaign lead for Clinton Gore. Mr. Spaeth has directed ESG efforts for Fortune 500 companies and provided thought leadership to shape forward-looking strategies. He has been endorsed by the Sierra Club and NJ Environmental Federation while enacting legislation to prevent the dumping of medical waste and the decommissioning of nuclear weapons. So my first question is, GIS and location services enable people everywhere to track progress throughout communities and geographies worldwide. And in the past years, Dr. Sheila, you have been part of the Urban and Regional Information Systems Association, and you also co-edited Resilient Communities Across Geographies for ESRI in 2021. So, what are the existing societal challenges and how can we address them with the help of geospatial data?
Yes, thank you. That's a wonderful question. And as you mentioned a few minutes ago, I think the number one challenge facing everybody globally is climate change. And additionally, the impacts then that are occurring on society. But what we're seeing is that the impacts are not getting spread out evenly. So the populations that are more vulnerable, that could be the indigenous, female-headed households, children, people with disabilities, ethnic minorities, landless tenants, migrant workers, displaced people, sexual and gender minorities. Any marginalized group is going to be experiencing the climate change impacts in a worse fashion. So I think that local people everywhere, my mantra is always when I'm doing research, local people everywhere know the resources the best and their environments the best. And so it's very important for us as researchers, as agents of change using GIS to make sure we engage with local communities, involve them, and incorporate them as part of the process and the solution making. Because when you come in as an outsider, you lack all that local knowledge. So that's my answer.
So I would like to know from Mike, what do you think how geospatial technology can help these communities address these challenges? How can they equip them with proper weapons to deal with it?
Yeah, so excellent question. And first of all, I'm a big fan of geospatial world and your mission. I think your work in providing knowledge, not just to me, but to the community and for the world economy and society is greatly appreciated. And, as far as, your question, I think one of the things that we're focusing on at Earth Daily can, answer a lot of the, pressing needs for the world and for society. One of the things we're focused on is the capturing of data every day from our satellite constellation, which is 10 satellites, to be able to provide this data in many ways. And one of the ones I'm really excited about is geospatial foundation models and a queryable Earth, where you're able to, ask questions direct. And, those can be, where do we expect a fire today? Is there any encroachment on biodiverse land trusts, getting an idea of, is there through thermal imagery any heat stress across the globe? So providing this satellite data, geospatial data, multi-sensor data to answer these questions versus via foundation models is where I'm focused and extremely excited about.
So, Mike, you have been working with the enterprises in a lot of things. So, how are the enterprises activities impacting the forest and biodiversity? I would like to ask you to share use cases to better explain this to our audience today.
Yeah, definitely. So, I started my work in geospatial at Moody's, specifically on ESG risk ratings. And the corporates want to be good stewards for the planet and the world. And, I found that they have, in many cases, thousands and thousands of assets globally. And it's hard, if not impossible, to monitor these assets and the impact they're having on the greater world, like in, let's say, biodiversity specific areas. And I think through Earth observation, specifically geospatial foundation models, they can easily query their assets. Let's say if they've got globally thousands of assets across multiple continents, to be able to say, okay, where is there a potential methane emission leak? Where is there potential encroachment in these areas? So being able to take a look on the corporate side to say, okay, what's happening out there, instead of guessing, right? Or because you can't drive a truck out to a remote area of the Amazon, but you can certainly visualize that through satellite data to kind of take that guessing game away and provide transparency. The corporate's providing transparency to the regulators, in addition to financial systems, to be able to monitor a portfolio for these corporate companies. So it's exciting because there's transparency out there via geospatial data.
So now carbon emissions are at its peak, and the entire world is grappling under the severe effects of climate change. How can government play a pivotal role in shaping ESG practices? This is questions to both of you, whoever would like to take it up.
I'll let you start, Dr. Sheila.
Okay, so I think that governments can play a very important role. Again, I'm going to come back to this theme of local engagement. It's wonderful to have the secondary data from the higher level satellites, from the monitoring systems. I feel like, when I teach and when I write, I'm always thinking about, we need to approach these issues from using triangulation, using multiple methods, using qualitative data as well as quantitative data. So I feel like recently I've been doing a lot of work with the IUCN out of Geneva and helping them with their approach to engagement with communities around the world, where people are collecting data, where local people are using their phones to actually to share their knowledge, their local knowledge, and any community, there are going to be local knowledge networks about the environment, social capital, human capital. And it's very important to have all these different types of data and local buy-in, because unfortunately what happens a lot is that we leave out the local perspective. So I think that tying in with agencies like the United Nations, building on those local networks. I mean, I'm ex-Peace Corps, so I'm used to I think it's partnering with those organizations that are out there effectively doing that work. And I see the IUCN doing a lot of that. So as a partner with them, with helping them do their engagement, I'd like to just underscore that point. But I really think that what Mike is sharing is quite interesting as well. So I think it's a combined approach. Yeah.
Yeah, and Dr. Sheila, I 100% agree. The local support, whether it's an NGO or multiple organizations that are the ground truth, is vital. And recently met with the Uzbek Space Agency, and they're doing some amazing things with our Earth observation in the government with the ability to monitor illegal mining. So being able to go out and look at thousands and thousands of assets in areas that are hard to reach by providing this imagery and then working with the local communities to be able to use the imagery to report on potential regulations. So, the countries, the regulators, the local communities are integral in using this remote sensing data and ground truth and really making a difference.
And I just want to say, I think it's wonderful the point you made about using the data, the satellite data, using the quantitative data as a starting point for ground truthing and engagement. So that's really key, because we always want to make sure we're seeing, as a starting point, is this data true? And what can you add to it, right? And what can you add to it? And a lot of times when you're on the ground, the perspective you have is very different than up in the air. So
definitely. And that local knowledge and expertise can really be used to be able to make decisions based on the data from space, tying it to that ground truth.
Exactly. I always say that. Yeah. So 100%.
Because ultimately the grassroots level people are the ones that are going to use that data. That data is going to be used for their benefit. So when it comes to climate related events or any kind of natural disaster, the communities in the grassroots are the ones at the receiving end. I'd like to know from Dr. Sheila if you have any use cases to share where geospatial technology has helped communities, or the communities have used geospatial technology in particular to manage the environmental situation.
Right. Yeah. So in our most recent book, Resilient Communities Across Geographies with Esri Press, it's a highlight of case studies from around the world. I think you may have seen that publication, but in putting that together, really our theme was, let's identify different case studies where communities have come together, and through GIS, it has been for good. It has been for improvement and strengthening of the communities. And so one that initially comes to mind is with the Martu people in Australia, and how the nonprofits there are working with the Martu people to help document their local knowledge, access to water, manage, because in the desert, it's very difficult to have access to water. And so helping to empower the local communities to manage their local resources, which they've always done, but to track it, to map it. Originally, the mapping was just done on drawings and in art, and now it's bringing in some of that scientific technology and incorporating local knowledge and drawing in the youth. So that's an example. Additionally, working with the Yurok tribe up in Northern California. I used to be a professor up at Humboldt, Cal Poly Humboldt. We've worked and engaged with them to look at what's the changing nature of the water and the resource and the fish, and then going out to the communities and bringing some of that scientific data, but trying to ask, what are some examples? Where can you show us where these changes are happening as a starting point? And then I think with IUCN, they have a system in place to already move forward and engage with the local people and the networks. So again, I think it's all over the globe, as Mike has noted too. So I think it's just learning how to tap in. And so many of the environmental problems we face, they're social. They're not technological. They're social. It's communication and engagement.
Absolutely. So now that we have already spoken about grassroots level communities, I'd like to ask Mike, since you are an ESG expert, so how can enterprises and governments, they can work together to help the communities or develop industry relevant skills?
Yeah, I think what's important when you look at the aspects of ESG, specifically within corporate reporting, is that remote sensing is a verification and a validation, right? I think there's a lot of claims out there and ESG reports that companies and corporates are helping the local communities. I think what's needed to not only say the words is to validate it through data and pictures. And a lot of these areas are extremely remote, hard to reach, or being impacted by natural catastrophes. And in those cases, there needs to be transparency through remote sensing data, because I've unfortunately found in many cases while I was at Moody's ESG that it was a check of a box, right? Oh, we're doing this in this local community to help in these ways. Well, we can't drive out there to see if it's happening, but we can, through geospatial data and remote sensing, have that validation and confirmation.
Mhm.
So, do you have any advice for the enterprises? What norms they can follow, or how can they drive this ESG revolution?
Yeah, I think having data and imagery to support claims is vital, not just for the corporates, but also for the financial service community. Asset owners and asset managers can look at their portfolios and reconfirm what they're stating in their ESG reports. So the asset owner, asset managers, the corporates, the regulators, the countries, the ratings agencies, all in hand using the same ground truth remote sensing data to verify what's really happening out there in the field.
So, there is an enormous amount of data that we have spoken about, which is collected on daily basis. With so much of data available, how can GIS help community leaders use the data for public good?
Do you want me to take that?
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
you can go,
Yeah,
Dr.
okay.
Shell.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Give you a break, Mike. Okay. So, um, no, so I think that one of the best, they say a picture's worth a thousand words, right? We've all heard that saying. And I think we can think of GIS in that way that you can't data in a spreadsheet is one thing. Data visualized, when you can visualize data, it really is much more impactful for showing people, resources, changes in environments. How do we need to impact policy? Where do these changes need to happen? So I think one of the big things that I've been focusing on a lot lately is telling stories with data, geospatial storytelling, and teaching that to the students and teaching that in the micro credentials. Because as we've talked about already in this webinar, you make better decisions when you have good data, but every good story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and some excitement going on. So you can generate that excitement using the geospatial and telling the story of the people and involving them and having their voices and the examples and all of this remote sensing data and GIS data. It can give a complete package view in a very efficient and quick manner, because a lot of times when you're dealing with policymakers or corporate leaders, they don't have a lot of time to sit and listen to you for forever. You need to be able to cut to the chase and show it. And with data visualization through GIS, you could do that. And storytelling.
right.
Yeah, I think what's important here is that in the past, if we wanted to verify, like an example is, okay, we want to know what's happening in the Amazon. Impossible. You can't drive it, you can't fly over it. So that's not possible. Then the second level is, okay, satellite data. So you get satellite data of the entire Amazon. Well, it's painstaking to be able to view it or go through the data. So that's not impossible like the first, but it's painstaking. The third, what I'm excited about, is the geospatial foundation models, where you can just put the entire daily data set into the foundation model to get an answer, to say, oh, okay, look here. This part of the Amazon has had change. So you can use the EarthDaily uh, constant daily data set of the Amazon to feed into the model, for the model to have the ability to do the change detection, to be able to find the areas that should be looked at. So, going from having to drive, going from having a human having to review all of that data, going to the foundation model to tell the human, keep the human in the loop, to say, okay, look here. So that's the exciting opportunity, is in number three.
So, Mike, you work very closely with the corporate. So,
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
no, no, please continue.
I apologize.
No, no problem. You please continue.
I couldn't hear the question.
Okay, so I was saying you work very closely with corporates, right? What norms should be added, or where are the laggings happening when it comes to reaching to the grassroots level, the sustainability efforts? What more can be done?
Well, I think there's a lot being done in EMEA on the regulation side that has been helpful. So knowing what those guardrail rails are through legislation, I think is key. And until that happens, you're going to have laggards not comply because there's no legislation in place that says this is how you should comply, or these are the penalties if you don't. So without that, you know carrot and stick, um, metaphor, there's no stick. So if there's no stick, then we comply for the betterment of the world, but that can only go so far on the corporate side.
I have a thought I could add into what he said too, if that's okay.
Please.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think,
sure, please.
yeah, I think certification is really the way to go. I often work as a social auditor for the forest stewardship certification, the international stamp of approval that can get put on food products, on timber products, etc. And it has a whole criteria of requirements for a company, let's say for a timber company or a food production company, to actually get stamped and approved as FSC certified. And with that certification comes a whole range of criteria: engagement with the communities, involvement of indigenous people, good treatment for the labor, for the people who work there. So, and certain sustainable practices as well are documented. So I think certifications going forward are really addressing that problem of what Mike was just saying. Nobody does things out of the goodness of their heart, but they do if it's good public relations. But also, the consumer is often looking for products that have a verification stamp like FSC. Yes, this is certified, positive ESG, whatever that would be. I think that's a great way to go as we look to the future. And Mike probably has more knowledge about that than me, but I just thought I'd throw that out there to support what he said.
No, I mean, that's a great point because it's the consumer that drives the stock price. And it's the, let's say, BlackRock that can divest if there's risk, right? So change detection and satellite data mitigates risk for the asset owners, asset managers to be able to make the financial service decision around their portfolio. So it's the consumer, it's the regulators, it's the brand. The brand quality is key, and in this case, having those stamps, like Dr. Sheila said, is a big part of it.
Dr. Sheila, you deal with students directly since you are a professor. So I want to know, is it important or how important it is to, instill this awareness amongst the students, because they are the ones who are going to serve in future, whether they are going to be part of communities or corporate culture, they are the ones that are going to, take commands. How important it is for them to, get geospatial skills.
Yes, it's very important. It's key because we think of geospatial tools. It's another tool in the toolbox for students to better understand their environments. I'm teaching a class right now on social inequality and stratification, and one requirement I'm having for the students is they must identify a geographic location. They have to identify data tied to that, and they have to identify the stakeholders using qualitative and quantitative. So the key for me and the beauty in this, because this is not a GIS class, but I incorporate that in there for the students who are not technical at all to understand, hey, we can get a better understanding of things like inequality, social vulnerability, climate change, when we bring in air quality, when we bring in and visualize data. So yes, I view it and teach it as just another tool in the toolbox, but a very powerful tool. Like we could almost say it's a power tool that they could take and use to impact. Students these days are very interested in social change, as always, and environmental change, and they want to do something. So they're not good to just stand by and say, let's study something to study it. Well, what are we going to do about it? And that's where the policy component comes in. So when you use GIS, you can target and say, this is where the change needs to occur. This is has to happen over here. These people need to move away from this polluted area. We need to improve the housing over here, so, or prevent the erosion. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and the students, this is an ancillary story with students, but they do play a big role. And in some ways, I've heard this story multiple times, is the student is at the kitchen table with their mom, who's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, or their dad, and they say, what's going on? What's going on? I saw, heard, read about this in making change, at the kitchen table. And then obviously, getting corporates or universities to divest of brands that aren't, eco-friendly. So those two ways I've seen over and over again, students make a difference.
And they love to be
Yes,
part of the process too.
Definitely.
you summed it up very nicely. So, lastly, I would like to ask you in just 2 words if you can describe what important steps that the world needs to take right now to power geospatial in everyday life.
So
It,
two words. Can I have clarification? 2 words that identify, clarify geospatial.
No,
Is
two
is that
words that the world needs to do right now to make geospatial come to the center stage in everything that we do.
Yeah, I think one is adoption, right? That these capabilities are out there, and I'm constantly shocked and frustrated when they're not being adopted. Like in Wall Street, not knowing or understanding that this capability is out there to look at all of your assets and not not guess or not take the word of a checkbox in an answer, to be able to say, oh, okay, well, there is no risk. I can see it. I get the data. This happened yesterday. This was here yesterday, and it's not here today. That's available. So adoption is one of the key words.
and for me, it would be geospatial engagement. So looking at how do we ground truth? How do we take the data that we have and share it? When you engage with different stakeholders and communities, they can see the value of the changes, the environmental changes that are going on, and economic and social, and they can understand where and how policy needs to change and where we need to take action. So to me, that's the 2 words, geospatial engagement.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sheila and Mike, for the insightful session. I'm sure our audience had a great time in learning about these important points that you mentioned. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Thank you. Great show.
Hi, friends and viewers, and a very warm welcome to the GW Bulletin, your daily dose of geospatial news. I am Aditya Chaturvedi, and here are your latest happenings. A SpaceX Falcon 9 launched a pair of Maxar intelligence imaging satellites from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. The Falcon 9 lifted off carrying Maxar 1, which is the first two Worldview Legion high resolution Earth observation satellites carrying powerful cameras capable of capturing precise images of small objects and features on the Earth's surface. These are the first two of a planned six satellite constellation fleet of electro optical imaging satellites, which would have a resolution of 30 centimeters, expected to triple Maxar's capacity to collect high quality imagery and map the planet. A new report from Microsoft outlines the steps the company took to release responsible AI platforms last year. In its responsible AI transparency report, which mainly talks about safely deploying AI products, the company is also focusing on tools in the past year that required the making generative AI applications to map risk throughout the entire development cycle. In another development, China has launched an unscrewed lunar mission that aims to bring back samples from far side of the moon for the very first time. It is a major step forward and a stride for Beijing's ambitious space program. The Chang'e probe is actually the most complex lunar mission till date. It blasted into outer space on the Long March 5 rocket from Wenchang Space Launch Center in South China's Hainan Island. This marks the start of a mission which is a key milestone not just for China but the entire world and would start a new leaf in the lunar space race between America and China. China also aims to send astronauts on the lunar surface, which is a sea of tranquility, by 2030 and build a research base there on its south pole. Shearwater Aerospace has developed an advanced AI-powered flight optimization and automation software aimed at significantly improving drones' operational efficiency. Smart Flight enables a single operator to manage multiple drones simultaneously. It is designed to optimize drone operations by utilizing wind power, avoiding obstacles, navigating through no-fly zones, and adverse weather conditions. This system not just enhances flight duration by 8 times and speed by, say, 30%, but it also leads to more safety and more scalable operations. Hexagon, which needs no introduction and is perhaps the global leader in digital reality solutions, combining sensors, software, autonomous technologies, has announced the acquisition of XWatch Safety Solutions, which provides machine control hardware and softwares for enhancing safety protocols on construction sites. This includes height control, slew control, rated capacity indication for heavy machinery, which allows operators to limit an excavator's height and set site boundaries to define a working zone. ICEYE, which is a Finnish satellite powered disaster management company, has announced a new data collaboration with Juniper, the dynamic reinsurance brokering arm and indirect subsidiary of BRP Group. Juniper will use ICEYE's flood and wildlife insights data to support their carrier clients by assessing near real-time data on large-scale events to determine impact within hours and support data-driven decision-making. Rapid access to this would enable clients to respond to natural disasters in real time, which would ultimately transform their ability to better manage and mitigate loss. Base Systems has received funding of $87 from the US Navy for work aboard the dock landing ship USS Carter Hall. The contract includes options that, if exercised, would bring the cumulative value to around $92 million. Under this competitively awarded contract, the USS Carter Hall will undergo a year of restorative work. Base Systems will start working aboard the longship in July 2024, which would require a combination of maintenance and preservation work on the hull, internal fuel ballast tanks, and the engineering plant. And with that, we come to the end of the live bulletin. Have a great weekend ahead, and then I'll see you on Monday.